Okay, so this is the second topic that we are looking at. It is called using personal experience in family history, and why it is important to use personal experience in family history, and how it is going to help us gain some sort of a foothold around the idea of exploring new topics in screenwriting. Something that we are going to look at in this session and maybe in the subsequent session. Um, yeah, so let's look at what the content would be primarily for this one. So good writing, most of the times you'd come across people saying that good writing is rewriting, okay, which means there must be some sort of a material that exists, and then you need to write that. So what life does is life mostly offers us experience of every kind, and all of us undergo some sort of an experience or the other, and something that we are conscious and subconsciously um, getting some sort of an understanding of. So what you need to do as a screenwriter or as an aspiring one is rewrite those sort of experiences and integrate them into the form of a screenplay. So write what you know to begin with. It's relatively better if we, you know, kind of deal with the familiar terrain first to begin with, since all of us are trying to break into this craft and trying to understand the nuances or the techniques of the craft. It's always better to kind of explore the familiar terrain and get started with some sort of your writing process. And then subsequently, you can explore other ideas. So even if you are writing about something about which you have no personal experience, and do research on the topics such as crime or history, the interpretation of the data will have to filter through your own perceptions. As you can see in this particular slide, there are certain words which are, or phrases which are highlighted. So I would be particularly kind of laying emphasis on those things and discussing. So when I say that you might not have any kind of a personal experience related to crime or history, when you are looking at a crime scenario or a crime-based event or a historical event, the way you try to interpret that data, the way you try to understand that information is also coming from your own perception, and your perception is subconscious based. That is shaped by your current experiences of life. Something that you're undergoing at this point in time will have some sort of an impact on that interpretation process. So it could be anything, it could be reading a book, or it could be um, whilst watching a television series which is based on crime or on history. You are constantly trying to understand it from your own perspective or your own point of view. So that brings objectivity to the material. Okay, many times we would also think that, but what is it that I am offering? Because somebody else would also be seeing the same material, or somebody else would also be experiencing the same event, and they could also have their own perspective, which is fine, which is where subjective experiences come from. But from subjective experiences, objectivity can be drawn for that material. This is where rewriting comes into picture when you are looking at personal experiences. So anything that is outside of you, that you are, you know, trying to use as a material could also be yours, provided you are ready to allow yourself to exercise your own perceptions and bring in some kind of an objectivity to that material. So this is where rewriting would, come handy. So acceptance that objectivity and imagination are both shaped by personal experiences is key to writing better, faster, because you are willing to embrace rather than avoid the moment by moment details of your life. Okay, sometimes there are very uncomfortable situations that we come across, and most of the times we try to let go of that. We avoid because we don't want to confront. Um, so what happens there is, at that point in time, if you are not using, whenever you are trying to write, if you don't want to recollect those memories which are not so great, you might be letting go of some sort of material. And at that point in time, when a particular event is happening in your life, something that brings some sort of a discomfort, we might not be able to pen it down if you are not a diary writer. I don't know how many of you are diary writers. Those people who write diary or maintain regular journals, they tend to write everything and they tend to pen those things down. Many a times we try to avoid those kind of things in real life, but which is okay. At that point in time, it might not be comprehensive enough to put those things down if you are not somebody who is familiar with the whole idea of diary writing or journal writing. But later on, when you look at those events which would come back as memories, you can have some sort of an objective point of view towards that particular event. What happens there is, because you're willing to embrace rather than avoid, and you are ready to take it up as some sort of an internal confrontation, you would have some sort of an actual material that would help you project the work that you are particularly doing at that moment, or something that you intend to work on later on. So the events of daily life, whether real or imaginary, are often similar, although I admit that our fictional characters go to the bathroom far less than we really do. What the point that I'm trying to make here is, we have rhythms in our own lives. So try to objectively observe those rhythms, and then you'll be able to create better screenplays that could feel real to your audience. Many a times we say that a particular narrative feels more real than the other ones. They feel real than the other ones because you can relate to those material. You can relate to everything that is projected on screen, or everything that is written in that screenplay, and that real that you feel, as audience or as a reader of that screenplay, you can experience that because somewhere that material becomes relatable. So how do we create relatable um, experiences? And when I say relatable experiences need not be everyday walk of life moments. It can be everyday walk of life moments. It can be fantastical as well. But how often do we come across people who also fantasize things, and they have more number of people fantasizing about the same thing in more or less similar ways? So what happens here is, when you are trying to objectively observe the things, the crest and troughs of your own lives, or from the near and dear, you would have some sort of material which is drawn from the real life. That's why uh, realistic narratives work, because you tend to gravitate towards them because you have similar experiences, or those experiences are relatable or familiar in nature. So what happens here is, if we mentally review, let's say, for example, the wedding sequence in the film Godfather, it follows the event of a real wedding. Okay, so whatever you see in wide shots um, gives you a montage of things that will happen in a real wedding as well. The preparation, the arrival of the guests, the eating, dancing, and the giving of gifts. These are the things mostly happen, as tiny events within the larger event, which is the wedding sequence. So knowing this real life sequence helps us organize a fictional one. So while writing Godfather, it would be easier for Coppola if Coppola would have attended weddings, or maybe it is his wedding or weddings of anybody in the family. So what happens is, next time you are struggling with a scene, you which has some sort of wedding sequence in it, you can just stop and imagine the events that are preceding and following a scene drawn from the real life. So, and this is one example, the wedding sequence is a very popular sequence, or in Godfather, the other sequence that also comes up is the baptism ceremony of the kid of, Michael's nephew. So at that point in time, parallelly, you would see, interestingly, the film intercuts with a lot of other killings. So how he actually becomes the godfather, not just to this kid symbolically, but to everyone in the town, and how he eliminates all his enemies strategically by placing his people so that there would not be any fear, so to say, to his business or to his legacy or to his family. So those sort of things could only come in provided you are aware of, you know, um, you have similar experiences in real life. So imagining or remembering what usually happens in such situations will spark your creativity to meet the demand that something unusual or dramatic might happen or can happen. By knowing what usually happens gives us some sort of a frame of reference that allows us to create other possibilities which are beyond your general imagination. But the moment you try to stretch yourself, you would have those sort of visual references. Okay, so here is an exercise. And this is not an exercise that you're going to do right now. It gives you a perspective of how this exercise could work, something that you can do leisurely as a homework. So set a timer for 15 minutes, then select a key sequence in your current script. If you are writing, this is for those people who are already into script writing, or if you intend to write one and you have a rough storyline, if you have um, some sort of an idea about how to navigate through that narrative, then you can particularly pick up one sequence which is important. And then what you could do is make a list of what would happen in real life. If similar sequence would happen in real life, then let's say, for example, using the wedding idea, you can select a date, find a place, make a guest list, order the food, so on. So these are the events that happen in almost everybody's houses whenever a wedding happens, right? So there's a lot of ideation that happens, a lot of discussion, debates happen in terms of choice of costumes and just choice of how, what sort of the menu you're going to offer to the guests, and then who are going to be called individually. Many a times guest lists are prepared. So those sort of things are all, integrated into the part of a pre-wedding scenario. So in such sort of when you are developing such sort of a sequence, all those things could be integrated. Then make a second list of the wildest thing that could happen. For example, the bride leaves the groom at the altar, or a bomb is hidden in the wedding cake. Now, these are the things um, that doesn't happen on everyday life, in everyday life, but also makes a cinematic sequence interesting. Many times it could be funny, many times it could be very serious, or have some sort of a serious consequential um, development in the later half of your story. So depending on how you want to project, or what sort of narrative you are developing, those things would immensely help you in building the sequences later on. Then reread your sequence while asking yourself if you can improve it by making it closer to what would really happen, or if it is boring because it is too close to reality, whether you need to add some more drama. Okay, so what you could possibly do is take up this sequence and see how close it is to the real life situations. If you want to kind of give an exact projection of what happens in a wedding scenario, then that's there. But also understand that cinema requires certain kind of drama. That's why timelines are altered. That's why real life events are also tweaked so that it fits the preceding scene and the scene that is going to succeed. So it must fit into the scheme of things of the screenplay. So if you want to exactly do the same way, because in real life also some sort of drama has happened, great, go ahead and do that. If that doesn't work, and if somehow it feels staccato, or somehow it feels boring, then what you could do is think about adding on some drama in terms of actions or dialogues, and then rewrite accordingly. Okay. The other thing is other sort of idea when we talk about using personal experiences would be try to live a day in the life of your characters. My personal preoccupation when I'm developing a new story is to find an experiential understanding of my characters. What do we mean by experiential understanding? Which means I am deep diving into the characters' lives and trying to see what they would do if what I would do if I would be playing them. Okay, it could be anybody, you know. Again, drawing from what um, was discussed at last part of our session, um, um, would be to keep things gender neutral. Doesn't really matter if you are a male script writer or a screenwriter writing about a female character, what sort of an understanding you would have of that female character. Um, or if you are somebody who is, you know, somebody who is was not experienced any of those sort of things, but you still want to do that. So you can draw or borrow from your understanding of the people whom you want to draw parallels with in terms of the characterization process. What I'm not asking you to do is just look at the ordinary tasks that they do in life. Um, what your character is going to perform in terms of actions can reveal a lot more things than about his or her nature or his or her internal psyche, or how he or she would react in certain situation, than just doing a background study, because this got to be active, not conceptual. If you're writing a novel, conceptual writing or conceptual point making would help. Since you're making a live action film which requires, or you're writing a live action films which requires some sort of uh, action driven scenes where your characters must do something instead of just thinking or projecting something which is conceptual in nature. So I'm not saying that it's not important that you give those sort of details about the character's birth, or place, or what sort of cultural background he's coming from, or nationality, or religion, or class. Those are critical details. Okay, you try to integrate them into actions in one way or the other, but writing that action is crucial. And so the smart writing would be that you use this sort of background details or critical details, um, and place them in certain circumstances which can take shape of sequences where actions will unfold. Okay. Um, Now, highly unlikely that a doctor is going to a doctor who is relatively experienced is going to go and kill a person, right? Unless driven to that sort of a situation. Now the point is, most of the times doctors don't go out and kill people. It's the gangsters or those people who are um, associated with some kind of a crime or history sheeters. So you can expect, uh, a criminal activity like murder from those kind of people. But you don't expect that from a lawyer. You don't expect that from a teacher. You don't expect that from, a doctor. But in such sort of a scenario where you're developing some, let's say, a crime drama or a revenge drama, or a very bizarrely black comic narrative, in that, if you have a character who is either a lawyer or a doctor or an engineer, people who are relatively respected in the society for their occupational nature, if those people are going to go out and kill somebody, they must have that sort of an uh, arrangement, or that they must have those sort of intent or a reason strong enough to go out and perform that action. So remember that the backgrounds are necessary, but not necessarily go with how the characters are going to unfold in term as far as the action is concerned, or how they're going to execute or perform those actions. So, and actions are also most of the times cause based. I have told this that causality is a very strong part of um, screenplay writing. So most of the times you need to keep that in mind while developing characters. So unless you step in to, unless you step into the character's shoes, many times you might not be able to find those big clues that are necessary to give movement to the character from one state to another. And each character in a story kind of possesses the same components as a real person. Okay, what does this mean? Each character in a story possesses the same component as a real person. Okay, so how people are in real life, most of the times, those characters are could also be um, carrying similar characterial traits. Okay, they could have traumatic experiences, unresolved personal conflicts, and most importantly, a mystery that keeps the reader or the viewer glued to the story. So developing that sort of a mystery or layer that adds value to the character would be interesting. Why does anyone commit a murder, like I told you? Or why does someone betray a friend? Why do some people prefer vanilla ice cream to chocolate? These type of behavioral questions can lead us into the experiential heart of a character easily and meticulously. What it means is you are deep diving into those sort of uh, experiences within the character's life. Okay, and trying to reverse engineer or backwardly look at their journey and say that why would this thing happen? So why would lead you to the how part of it. Okay, the moment you start figuring out the questions, the answer should also follow, and it would follow the logic of questioning them. Okay, because you're questioning that thing, it will follow the that part largely. So live a life in the day of a character and use your personal experiences to add layers to the character's life. You can do either way. Think about the character quite a bit and see how you would react or respond when you are playing that character, or if you have, because you are the developer of that character. You're developer of all characters. That's why um, uh, 2 sessions back, I told you that we because we are developing, we are the creators of these characters. We cannot, we might take a stand of empathy, but we can't be judgmental about developing certain characters. Tomorrow, I am creating a character who is a serial killer for that matter. Now, serial killing is not something that I have ever done in my life, let alone any kind of killing. So in such sort of a situation, how would I get into it? I would again borrow from the kind of text that I've read or the kind of series or films that I've done. But those things, remember, are already done. So if I have to design or develop a character which is very unlike or something that the world has not experienced or seen, and yet indulges in serial killing, then I have to actually come up with something, maybe from my own personal experiences, which could add value to those characters' life. Because otherwise, what would happen is I would mostly be borrowing things from here and there. Okay, so this is crucial that you try to step into the character's life, or kind of borrow from your own life and add value to the characters. Okay, now how do we use family history or draw from personal experiences and add on to our screenplay? So there are certain points that I have made. I am going through those points. Okay. First one is own your story. Okay. What does it mean? That you are absolutely the best person in the world to write your own story and your family history. Once you are familiar with your family history, if you are not too familiar with your family history, try to know about your family history. Okay, it's very interesting. As early as you can trace back, try to trace back, ask your parents or grandparents if they're alive, and then ask where did they come from, or what did their parents do, and so on and so forth. And if there is some sort of a tradition that has been maintained, and you are the only human being ever born to this earth who has your own unique perspective and life experiences. So the most interesting thing about cinema or screenplay is this, that when you're developing something seems to be original, okay, or which is closest possible to an original experience, is the unique perspective that you are bringing in, because each of us are gifted in our own special ways. We think differently, and so if anything that is original, that is you, because you are the one who knows the details. You are the ones who is willing to throw things open and try to excavate or try to experiment or around the experiences that your family has shared over a period of time, or you have shared being part of that family. Then make a timeline of major life events. Okay, in a notebook or a computer document where whatever is comfortable. Write down each year you have been alive. This is an exercise I would suggest all of you do. Leave a page or two in between each year. Now start adding in all the big turning points that divide your life into chapters. Being born, going to school, moving, changing schools, reaching religious milestones, learning to drive, graduating, or getting a job, changing jobs, getting married, having children. Now, any of those things, or just thinking from your parents' perspective. I mean, there's a couple of things that you are yet to experience. Like, for example, you have not graduated, you have not gotten yourself a job. I'm not sure if anybody is doing job here or changing jobs, or you have not married. I would like to believe, or you haven't have had children first. The point is, your parents have. So they have that the circle that I'm talking about. So maybe you can have a conversation with them. Rest of the things about the second part of this sort of a cycle. The first part is something that you have already done. So either you wait, or what if you start thinking in those lines. Okay, what would happen if you have to change jobs? What sort of a personality you are? What kind of a job you would look into the market? Tomorrow, if you have to get married, if you believe in the institution of marriage, or tomorrow, if you plan to get married, what sort of a partner you would be looking for? And do you want to have children in the first place, or you don't want to have children? So those are the questions which would be there, right? So you may um, kind of look at the document or framework, and there are certain unhappy events that also happens within families, like divorces or death. um, Try not to avoid those things. I'm not saying confront it completely if you don't want to, but as a screenwriter, understand that you have to objectively look at those things. So incidents happen, like marriages happen, divorces happen. If two people are not compatible with each other, um, it's better to part ways and live, you know, happily or peacefully, than dragging an institution and be unhappy. And death is something that occurs to everyone and will happen sooner or later. Uh, so, what are your thoughts around death, if you think about it, and or deaths that has happened within the family, which are something that many times it's difficult for people to comprehend, but then that's there. So, jot down names, places, dates, events, those kind of things, kind of give it a picture. So once you have the complete personal history or the major life events, there is a lot of better things to explore from than nothing. If you are inspired, keep going. You'll have a great framework for writing a thorough personal history. It's something that you could do and borrow from, and it would be interesting. Now be specific. Add as many relevant details as you can when you are sharing a memory. So because you are also going back in time and trying to add on. So you add, leave space, add more later on. Keep thinking about those things. If you can make a general statement, think about the evidence you include if you have to prove that you are telling the truth. Okay, maybe through images, or maybe through old writings, or maybe through anything. I mean, anything which could be physically refurbished later on, or could be used as an evidence. This is a personal exercise. Remember, you are doing with your own self, um, because you want to use personal experiences of family history to develop materials. Okay, so I'm stopping here right now, and then we can take questions or